Places. Places. Did you hear that?
Heck yeah!
You are listening to Calling Out Controversy, the new political and economic talk show that's taking over the information station where you'll never know what you'll hear next. It's 88.3 FM, WVCR, The Saint. Now let's focus up, because here's Nicole Commisso and Andrew Hecht with this week's topic. Hey everybody, this is Andrew Hecht. Thank you for listening. Of course, you know the time. It is 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning, so have you had fun partying? I did. Here we go. So Nicole's out doing graduation things. Nicole, come back to me. I'm here today with Justin Kenyon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Nick Desautels.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're talking about voter-friendly campus, which Justin created on Siena College campus, and we're also going to be talking about some surprising legislation that might be passing around in New York, and a couple other things, just kind of shooting the ball around today, having a blast. All right, Justin, can you please tell us what voter-friendly campus is, why it's important, and how you got involved in this project?
Well, first off, to start off with how I got involved, voter-friendly campus was, I discovered it at a conference through the Bonner organization, or the Bonner Foundation, which is a nonprofit group on campus I'm involved with. Won't go much into the details of that group. But I came around to it at a conference when somebody talked about it during one kind of event we went to, and I thought it would be a good idea to bring to Siena. So I came back, emailed it to Dr. Lewis and Dr. Collins, two political science professors here. Dr. Lewis picked it up, and then we created a coalition revolving around me as the coalition leader, the student lead. Dr. Lewis was the professor's lead, or the faculty lead. And then we had the College Republicans, Turning Point, Young Americans for Liberty, Political Science Society, and Young Democrats. And we basically came up with an action plan to help get the word out about elections, get students registered to vote, get the word out about many elections going on in the area and states around New York State.
So that's local elections,
yes,
federal elections, state elections.
Yes, it was. We did basically like congressional elections, governor, like we did the New York State gubernatorial election. We also did the congressional race between like Delgado and Faso. We did other races in other states. So basically, like if they had a big race coming up in 2018 or a competitive race, we would give basically students information, which we went out through the College Democrats. But next cycle, when we have to reapply for the designation, because it's a election by election basis on it.
Okay.
We have it for 2020. And once we start the action plan again and we start researching the candidates again, we would then now, instead of going out through the College Democrats, because they had the best social media presence out of all the political clubs on campus, we would then use student activities to send a campus-wide email or something close to that.
So when you say it goes by election, is it that every election cycle you need to re-up to say we're going to be a voter-friendly campus? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. So the way that works is that we went through the process of applying in 2018. So we had the designation for 2020. In order to keep it for 2022, we have to reapply for it based off our actions in 2020.
All right. And does voter-friendly campus endorse candidates?
No.
Okay, so it's a completely neutral entity.
Yes, it's nonpartisan. It's just basically an activity or a designation to get students on campus out to vote, because it's usually a very low group to go out and vote, which actually this past election saw a spike of young people going out to vote, which I believe was the highest since World War I.
Really?
Yes.
So a new high in over 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's at least according to the data that they gave me.
Okay, so why is, it's kind of a silly question, but why do you think that college-age students voting is important? Like, why should people care?
Well, I mean, if it's more of a question of, like, why should you care, period, about voting? I mean, it's one thing that affects how stuff is done in your realm of politics. I mean, whether it's local, state, national. I mean, you always hear the thing of, like, well, if you don't vote, you can't complain. And you hear a lot of people do complain, and then there's like, well, I wish there was one way I could change that. And it's like, there is.
Yeah, you got to vote.
But nobody wants to take take the initiative on that. Although there are some people who don't turn out for other reasons, but it's important to get out. It's a very democratic thing to do. It's probably the most democratic, and some people argue the most American thing you can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
vote.
which is funny because most
Go
Americans don't vote.
Usually around like 60% or 55% vote in like presidential elections all the time. So,
Nick,
Which
are
is
you a
sadly
registered
low
voter?
number. Yes, I am a registered voter. I have voted every year I've been able to since I turned 18.
All right.
And that I do have actually, since you've told me more about this, I have really strong opinions on this being an important issue, because I talked to some of my friends and they're telling me like, oh, who cares about this stuff? Why even bother voting? And I say, because we're going to be out of college soon. We're going to hit the real world.
Yep.
And all these policies that our lawmakers are implementing are going to be affecting us once we get out into the real world. Everything that's going on right now is going to have an impact down the line. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it.
well, nobody also likes to think that way. I mean, like we like to think, especially in this country, that we're more proactive and reactive instead of proactive. We wait for something to happen, then we react. So I mean, kind of always just like, oh man, how did we get here? It's like,
Well, if you look back a little bit, you can tell, you know.
That's why certain policies look better to younger people than they do to older people.
Yeah, but the problem is that younger people now are kind of indoctrinated into a groupthink way of getting things done. I mean,
I call myself more of a conservative than a libertarian,
Yeah.
but I do find myself occasionally, probably because I'm younger,
Yeah.
somewhat breaking away from the conservative views to where I can see the pros of different ideas that most, Republicans would never back, such as the marijuana issue.
Kind of a conservatarian stance.
Yeah, kind of, but
conservatarian.
Yeah, there actually is a school of like libertarian thought. Like there's many different types of libertarians. Like there's social libertarians
Because
there's
nobody's ever
fiscal.
organized.
No, there actually is. Like there actually is a book called the Conservatarian Manifesto.
really,
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, but there actually is like a whole entire like different schools of thought regarding around what type of libertarian you are. I mean, like Milo Yiannopoulos and David Rubin have this whole entire long interview about like, oh well, we're social libertarians. We're not really like full
I
on
wouldn't
libertarians.
consider Milo Yiannopoulos a libertarian by any standard.
Well, he called himself one. I'm not calling him one. but, like,
self-proclaimed.
yeah, he's the fabulous man, as he likes to proclaim himself to be, I guess.
It's actually not surprising to me though, because as far as what I've seen, and going through all the different political pages on Instagram and Facebook and all that, I'm seeing a lot of push for libertarianism among conservatives, which is kind of surprising for me. But at the same time, it's because this younger generation is coming in, which brings it back to why they should be educated.
Well, I think what you're going to find in the future, which is something I'm really hoping for, is that the Republican Party, which is the bastion of conservatism in this country, is dying. The Republican Party is disproportionately old, is disproportionately white, is disproportionately wealthy compared to the other parties. That is
usually on
runs it.
average, as you get older, you tend to become more and more conservative, too.
Well, that's because you realize that when you're trying to support a family and do stuff, taxes suck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, pretty much.
When it comes to conservatism in this country, that's what the traditional look of a Republican is. Which I'm not knocking.
Well, I think
I'm
it's
just
shifting
saying,
from that a little bit
It
as
is
well,
shifting.
though.
I
which
mean,
is
also-
why I'm saying I think it might yield to libertarianism, because
Yeah.
the youth is never going to get behind some of the things that make conservatives conservative.
Now, I don't think they'll take on stuff like abortion and everything, but they will take on stuff like gay marriage and stuff like that. Probably.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even Donald Trump, who is, the Republican president right now, has made statements about supporting gay people and gay marriage. This was during his campaign.
Yeah.
And
He's
it was
the first
something
president
that
to come
was,
into office supporting gay marriage. He's not the first president to support it, but he's the first one to come into office
Yes.
supporting it.
And but as a Republican candidate, that was kind of like shocking for a lot of the more conservative Republicans who were like, old-fashioned gay marriage is bad, which, I mean, I don't see a problem with it personally. And a lot of conservatives now don't. So I think instead of, in my opinion, you're not going to see as much of a yield as you're going to see a fusion between libertarianism and conservatism.
I mean, even Kevin McCarthy.
And I think that's kind of their way of trying to stay alive and stay relevant as everybody's, the generations are shifting and younger people are coming into the voting.
Yeah, also you got to look at the fact that, like, the Democratic Party is a coalitional party, while the Republican Party is an ideological party. It's not based off coalitions like the Democrats are. They're based solely off of really much ideology.
Well,
Absolutely.
it's also the fact that when we talk to like a fusion between libertarianism and conservatism, it boils down to basic libertarian principles, because conservatives still want to fund stuff. They call it investing, and that's their prerogative to try and take taxes and invest it in other people's lives, either national defense or projects or whatever they want to use it for.
Pretty much.
but as a libertarian, that's got to go. If you believe that taxes got to go completely, you can't truly call yourself a conservative. Because the reason is that you're then going to give up the ability to invest in public projects, which is, to me, a good thing. I don't see a problem with that. The thing I like about libertarianism, and the reason I joined it, is because you're able to be as socially liberal as you want, do whatever you want, put in your body whatever you want, put on your body whatever you want, and at the same time, you just don't want people touching your things, and you don't want people taking your stuff, especially your money. And that's the best of both worlds.
Yeah,
which is why I think it's increasing in popularity, because people go, all I want to do is be able to afford a happy life and live the life the way I choose. The way I've been seeing it, at least in my social circle, is it's pretty polar at this point. I don't see a lot of Democrats and Republicans anymore. What I see now is like straight socialists who think the way to live the life that they want to live is by everybody sharing, like it's a Barney episode.
Which in my opinion is terrifying.
Yeah. I never liked him.
Gotta get the Bernie Sanders types who will share all the money except for the money that he made off his best-selling book.
Yeah. So like you have those.
That's a big topic. We can get into
Yeah.
Yeah. You have those.
Michael Moore, everybody give away $1 million except for me.
Exactly. And then you have the exact opposite of that, which is people like me, where I go, no sharing, compete. Like true competition. Not this weird capitalism that we've embraced in the last 60 years or so, where we're going to only do the money-making part and not the regulating part. You know, not the capitalism that resulted in Bernie Madoff being able to just wreck the SEC in a game of chess that cost $17 billion, and the inevitable death of one of his sons.
He also knew what he was doing. I mean, he was the former chairman of NASDAQ.
Right, but the reason that he got away with what he did, in my opinion, is because we underfunded the regulatory agency that is one of the most important agencies in the country. The SEC is not a bad thing. The SEC is what you need to survive in pure competition, because it's the referee. It says you're playing the game poorly. You're not competing fair. You're bribing, you're cheating, you're corrupting, and coercing people. A Ponzi scheme shouldn't have been hard to catch. And well, I mean,
a
his was
lot
like
of them,
billions of dollars. So like what I'm saying is that
well, even the New York Mets were involved in it. Or was it Barry Alvarez? It was one of the two.
Everybody, well, it wasn't that they were involved in it. They got their money like caught up in it. Like pensioners were involved.
Yeah. Because everybody trusted him because he was the chairman of NASDAQ.
Right.
And also, like, one of the things that some people say, like, leads to these people getting caught, especially in these Ponzi schemes, as you say, is because, like, when the economy goes bad, everybody starts going like, well, hey, Bernie, I know I invested with you, but I need my money back now. And, like, he's like, well, I can't give you that.
Well,
like,
that's
already
Ponzi
been
scheme.
redistributed.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a Ponzi
That's
scheme.
why they get caught, because,
Absolutely.
like, the economy goes bad. Like, there's many people who say, like, oh, if the 2008 crash didn't happen, he wouldn't be caught. Like, he would still be going on strong.
And it's absolutely possible. I mean, once you need your money back and you can't get it, then what are you going to do?
Right. So we got to take a break here. I think the important part to take away is really that the true purpose of capitalism is that you need regulatory and legitimizing agencies as well as competition. It can't just be pure, unbroken competition. I think we got away from that in this country financially. We'll be right back. We just got to stop for a quick sponsorship by WVCR 88.3 FM, The Saint. That was a wonderful sponsorship from WVCR, The Saint, as always. I'm still with Justin and Nick, and we were just mentioning capitalism and how it kind of needs to be remediated a little bit from what it is now, going back to like true Smithian capitalism. We're going to wrap up our conversation there with the thought that what we have right now is a really polar society, and we're seeing a new polarization shift. And I think we're a little excited about that because that means that we get to shake things up a bit. There's going to be new places to try and fit in. A lot of ambitious people are going to make a lot of good moves. That's my personal view of it. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I agree, yeah.
I'd say the future is going to be interesting, if not just bright, but interesting for anybody who's trying to get into the business world or the political world at all. Is going to be a very large conflict of ideas, but it's going to be one that I think will push the whole system forward.
And
Pretty
speaking of controversial ideas, so April 9th, which was roughly 2 weeks ago now, I think, we saw a news headline.
A week ago.
So the New York Daily News had an article about Andrew Cuomo making a remark on what they called poison pills. But that's a pretty misleading comment because really what it
getting
was
cyanide or anything.
No. What it really is about assisted suicide for terminally ill patients and people struggling with diseases and crippling disabilities or old age or things where you kind of just don't want to live anymore. And it's not like anybody can do anything to help you anyway. So maybe electing a peaceful death as opposed to dragging it out. It's really what the bill is about. And to be honest, I don't agree with Cuomo on a lot of things, but
Or anything.
yeah, except this, actually. I'm very much in favor of this idea. I think that I don't wish it on someone to watch their loved one suffer. I think that one of the rights you have as a human is the right to a quick death. Not necessarily a painless one, because obviously there are plenty of ways to die where it's going to suck, but you're entitled to a quick death, a merciful death, if possible. And because of that belief that I hold, I'm all for these, what they're calling suicide pills at the New York Daily News.
So for me, I mean, I can see where your opinion comes from. I mean, I had to watch my grandmother suffer for days in the hospital as she was passing. It was a very traumatic experience. It was very sad to the point where, you know, a lot of us were saying we hope that she can go quick so she's not suffering.
Yeah.
And that's one point of it. My concerns are two main things. One, it's that with this, the value of life is kind of ignored, and there are a lot of other causes. I mean, when we were with my grandmother, we were all right there. The whole family was with her, and anybody who would suffer from her loss was right there, hoping and praying that she would go quick. But if, say, it depends on the extent they're doing it. If you're just an older person who has some pains and it says, it's my time, I'm sick of being alive, there's a lot that leaves open to where the family might have problems, and it's not even clear, like with a lot of old people, how mentally stable they are. There are a lot of cases where in old age people get confused. And one day they'll
just
say,
like if they have a mental disability at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if we allow this to, go all the way through and it becomes a known normal thing to have this assisted suicide, I'm worried to where it will progress. I'm worried to the extent at which life will be devalued and people who even are not dying can say, I want to commit suicide and not have it be a problem and just, be able to get these pills like readily.
Well, there's countries in Europe that have already said that if you're a completely sane human being and you're reasonable and you're able to function completely properly and you just don't want to live anymore and you've pulled a full psychiatric evaluation and you come out clean and you just choose to die, that there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to make that choice for yourself. Would that be
physician assisted if you're sick, or is that just like you want to die?
Well, again, like, obviously, no one's going to be able to stop you from killing yourself if you're going to kill yourself. But if you want to elect death as an option, like, if you're just tired of living, like,
it'd be more suicide than physician assisted.
It'd be more suicide than the whole merciful death idea. And
that's
where I'm concerned of it going.
Yeah, that's where you're saying it might go. But to me, that's also not that big of a deal, personally, because to me, if you're a full, sound mind and body, and you're making a mature choice, and you say, you know what, man, I've been here for a long time, I just don't want this anymore. Well, then why should someone else be in the way to stop you?
Well, that also depends on your view of like suicide and everything. I mean, like right now, like a lot of, psychiatrists and, that also depends a lot on your view of like suicide and everything. Like right now, supposedly we are going through a kind of an epidemic of suicide, especially among like older white men or something like that. And this was seen a lot, or highlighted a lot, when Anthony Bourdain committed suicide along with Kate Spade.
Yeah.
And a lot of people started coming out like we have this rising problem of suicide. So it depends on whether or not you see as like your right to just die and kill yourself, or if you see it more as like a mental health issue with suicide, as I see it.
And you say you brought up the point that if you're perfectly mentally healthy and you just want to die, then you should be able to do that. One might also come back and argue, though, that if you are wanting to die, then there is some deep-rooted mental problems there.
Yeah.
Even though you might seem like perfectly mentally stable, the fact in and of itself that you say, I'm ready to go, I want to die, shows that there is something going on with you. And I mean, you look at how many people attempt suicide, fail, and are glad that they failed. And then you look at the people who, out of the blue, decided, I'm not ready to live anymore, I'm ready to go. And you see the blowback of that. I mean, we're talking that other people who normally would have been fine are so distraught over this, whether it's parents, whether it's spouses, that they commit suicide or they turn to other bad methods. And I think that it all comes back to what I opened with, is that human life is being devalued. And I think the more we allow that, and the more we allow people to just say, yeah, life is just meh, we're going to go, that we're really losing touch of what it means to be alive and what it means to be a human, because we only get this one chance. And that's a big decision that I don't think someone should just be able to make and say, hey, I'm done.
Well,
I mean,
here's a counterpoint
to that.
Here's a counterpoint to that. There's two counterpoints that I'll propose, which is there's the question of true freedom and true free will. And then there's also the question of what is exactly the value of a human life. So if you take it from a numerical standpoint and you look at it on a global scale, there are 7 billion plus people that live on this planet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not an insensitive thing to think when you say out of 7 billion, how many people are either A, living a life that is to its full potential, or B, productive at their full potential. Now, obviously, you can't just go around killing people because they're not productive enough, because that would be wrong.
Absolutely.
Very much so.
As long as we can agree on that. And
that's a great agreeing point right there for everybody across the political spectrum. You can't do that.
You can't just murder people. So, at the same time, though, there are going to be people in the world who just don't want to be here. And here's the thing. There's a catch with what you mentioned with if you pass a psych evaluation, you still want to kill yourself, there's something wrong. Well, that's kind of the catch with the passing of a psych evaluation. You should be able to say, look, why do you want to die? If they have a very good reason and they're like, okay, that's a logical, thought out way. Like if someone's alone, nobody sees them anymore, they just need a friend. Like, yeah, okay, that may not be the best reason because you could just reach out to someone and make their day better, making them less lonely. If it's something that comes from you're sick and you're hurt and you're tired of feeling pain all the time and there's no getting better for you, that's not something that I'm going to say no to. Like that's someone saying, listen, what is the true life worth living if all you live is in pain and misery? And that's something that people shouldn't get in the way with. There's also people that are just old and are tired. There's people out here that are like 80, 90 years old that go, you know what, man, I've done everything. My kids are fully grown. They don't visit. I have grandkids. They don't visit. And I've done everything I wanted to do. There's nothing left for me to do here. So if you want to go,
I mean, that also
go.
still depends on your view of it, whether you view it as a mental health issue or you view it as, as in your case, a freedom issue.
And I definitely, for me, I see it definitely more as a mental health issue, and I see it more as a human life issue. I mean, going to back to my example of my grandmother, she was in pain for a very long time before she was hospitalized, and we were trying all these ways to fix it, all these ways to treat the pain, and nothing worked. And there were obviously points where she was feeling down. She was feeling like, what more can I do? But at the same time, the time that I was able to spend, I spent an entire summer living with her and helping her out while she was in pain. That time that I got to spend with her and that my mother got to spend with her, it was something that was invaluable. And I think that if she were to say, well, I'm done beforehand, it would have been really sad to miss out on all the time that I got to have.
Which is a fair point, but to counter that point, speeding the process up, because I was in a similar situation.
Yeah.
I was in a similar situation just this past few months.
Yeah, so we've all been there, and
Actually,
speeding up.
And for the record, I'm sorry for both of your losses.
No, I mean everybody's the same. Yeah. Going back to that though, when you get up to that final point, you're already in hospice, and it's now a waiting game. That's where I think something like an assisted suicide can come into play, because if it's just a matter of time and they're not responsive, instead of having an election where you say, oh, do you want life-preserving methods or not? There should be a third option, which is the exact opposite of life preservation methods, which is if I'm just waiting to die, let's cut to the chase.
Well, if that's what we're talking about, I agree with that.
Well, I mean, there's different variables to how this would play.
I agree with it too, but I just want you to clarify one thing. What would you qualify as responsive?
Well, for example, when my grandmother was passing away 3 years ago now, she said her goodbyes, and then she just stopped talking, and then it was a matter of we had to wait for her organs to shut down. It took so long, I ended up having to go back to work, and I found out over the phone that she finally passed. But I said my goodbyes, and I had that conclusion, and then I had to spend time with my parents waiting it out. That waiting it out part is the part that I think drives a bill like this, where you sit there and go, if you said your goodbyes and you made your peace, then instead of waiting for someone's liver to go, and then kidneys to go, and then stomach to stop working, heart, lungs, like waiting for them to just break down as a human being, say your goodbyes, make your peace with God, if you do that type of thing, and then pop a pill and wait it out. There's a very famous stand-up bit from Doug Stanhope, comedian, who talks about something similar involving his mother going back a few years. I think maybe like 5 or 6 years now. And I resonated with that bit. You can go look it up. Yeah. Where he talks about like giving his mother morphine. And that's tragic, but you know what? In that family, in that scenario, that was better for them than sitting and waiting for her to just become a corpse in their back room.
No, see,
yeah, I mean, that's the same thing happened with my grandfather. And that's the main reason I asked, like, what was your, like, what would you define as responsive? Because, like, for example, with my grandfather, he was in a back room with, like, 1 or 2 people visiting him at a time. And then the hospice worker came and then said, like, he couldn't really speak or much or anything. He couldn't really move. He could communicate a little bit, but not much. And then, like, or really at all towards the end, like his last few days. And then the hospice worker came and said, like, his anxiety's going through the roof because he can tell all the action that's going on outside the room. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of like wondering, that's why I kind of wanted you to clarify what your terms of responsibility.
There's a very broad way to look at it. There's a very narrow way to look at it. But overall, I think it's a step in the right direction. I agree with the bill that he's talking about in the article, and I think it's something that we should be able to do more. I know you wanted to bring up Jack Kevorkian, but we're running out of time. Again, I'm sorry. So we should revisit this later.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And, you know, when Nicole comes back, get her thoughts on it, obviously.
Yeah.
And you know what, guys? I appreciate having you on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Happy to be back again.
Looking forward to this summer.
Yeah. Justin's joining me in the summer. So that's going to be a fun time. And guys, you know what? It's been a good episode, and thank you, listeners, for listening, and thank you, WVCR. It's been a good night on 88.3 FM, The Saint. Have a good one.